Here's one for you. A friend of mine, a few years back, comes home and there's a message on his answering machine. It's a call from Canada Revenue Agency, phone number, and give us a call, kind of thing. So he calls the next day and he asks for the Canada Revenue Agency. I think it was a girl who was on the phone. So he's having a little chit chat with the girl that basically he's standing his ground. He wants to talk to the Canada Revenue Agency. He says, I got a phone call from the Canada Revenue Agency asking me to call the so and so at the Canada Revenue Agency. I want to talk to the Canada Revenue Agency. Well, eventually the girl admitted that there is actually no Canada Revenue Agency. And then he says, so he comes back and says, oh, so it's just a bunch of children playing games, and hung up. And that was the end of that. So what was he doing there? He was facing the fiction head on. No paperwork, just dealing with it right there on the phone. Okay, I got a message from XYZ, whether it be Government of Canada, Government of Australia, Government of Ontario, someone from the courthouse, Superior Court of Justice, Office of the Attorney General, whoever, whatever, wherever. With respect to these organizations, they don't actually exist at all. It's fiction. They're persons, they're fictional beings, and fictional beings do not exist. It's all in the mind. A friend of mine was at work and he got a phone call. He would attest to this. It was a few years back too, as well. Not that many, but he was at work and got a phone call. So he takes the phone, and lo and behold, it's Canada Revenue Agency. He fainted on the spot. He fainted on the spot because of a voice on the other end said something about Canada Revenue Agency, and he fainted on the spot. That's how much power we give to these fictions, these things that are actually not real, that have no power at all. So who's giving it the power here? Yeah, he fainted. Something else he did was funny too, but that's another story, and not part of this, of what I'm just sharing here. So whether it be Minister of Transportation or someone calling from an office or whatever office or wherever, who cares what it is, it's going to be a fictional thing. I share the story of the gentleman that was in court looking at 10 years conviction. That's what he was there for. They got into the conversation with the judge about what Canada is. And that at the end of that, the short version is, well, it that's basically was the conversation. And then that's when the judge started flipping out and throwing papers at the Crown prosecutor and giving him heck, asking, what's this man doing in my court? Fictions don't exist. It's not that complicated. This is not rocket science. And you have every right to meet your accuser. Whether it be Her Majesty the Queen of Canada, well, we've got to meet my accuser. If it's or somebody from the Canada Revenue Agency, I don't want to talk to any representatives. I want to talk to my accuser. I want to talk to Canada Revenue Agency. Put Mr. or Mrs. Canada Revenue Agency on the phone, please. Well, guess what, people? It doesn't exist. There's no life there. That's the whole point of it. That's fiction. You see, what God created is real. It's got life. Life. These fictional things have no life. They are not real. They have no power. You do. And nothing to fear here. It's like my friend there that fainted. It's like he was fearing this thing. And that's why God says, you flee when no man pursueth. He's fearing these fictional things, running away from these things. Instead of facing it head on, okay, fair enough. I got a phone call from, or I got a communication from, or letter from XYZ, fictional person, thing, whatever. Call them up. Just deal with it. Face it head on. Because now if persons are fictional beings. You see, you've always got that evidence in the back of your pocket. There's no way they can overcome that. You don't have to deal with it right here on the phone today, but point being is that you want to talk to, okay, I got a phone call from the bank. Now, there's some situations here you may not want to do that. Let me throw that out there. If you don't want to lose your home or your car or stuff like that, or your family. So, exercise some wise as a serpent here and harmless as a dove would be smart, I would think. So yeah. So anyhow, that's just so you'll know when you're dealing man to man or man to woman or whatever, and face to face. None of it's in person nonsense or personally. No, no, we're talking man to man. You'll know when you're dealing man to man and when you're not dealing man to man. When you're not dealing man to man, there must be a fiction on the other end of the phone. It might be a woman or a man talking, but they're not Canada Revenue Agency. They're not General Motors. They're not Government of Ontario. They're not the Health Department. They're not the Superior Court of Justice. They're not the town of Coburg. They're acting for and thinking for and speaking for these things, right? Just like you speak for John Paul Smith. As if John Paul Smith, or everyone I know. God love you. God bless you. I love you. And later, Gators. Ciao for now. Enjoy. This identity thing, as I said, it's one is either of God, that's your maker, or of Canada, or United States, or Australia, or England, or whatever. One is real, one is fiction. Now, when you're first born, you're of God, made in the image and likeness of God, correct? We all are made in the image and likeness of God. That's our maker, that's our owner, that's our ruler, that's our lawgiver, our judge. But then sometime after, and if we had stayed there, in other words, if we hadn't got the birth certificate, we hadn't jumped ship and got a social insurance number, driver's license, and then clearly made the decision that we want some other to be our God, if we hadn't done that, then you would be a man and the beneficiary of the trust, evidenced by the foundational security that they have custody of. They would have that, there would be you, and that's it. But instead, we applied for that birth certificate, which has a person's name on it now, and we use that to do other things with it. And to do any of these other things, you had to appear in person. In order to appear in person, that's why you needed the birth certificate. That was your key to get into to even enter into Wonderland. Period. I can put it that way. So we use that key to get other things, and now we've basically established ourselves in Wonderland. And we had to appear in person to do these things, and under the authority of legislation of Wonderland. So now it's basically all of that activity and those government documentations, driver's license, so on and so forth, and bank cards, credit cards, all that sort of stuff says of Canada, of United States, of Germany, of New Zealand, whatever. And that's the change of identity. So now you belong to the country. Like I said in the first part of this recording, anything and everything you're doing in that name of John Paul Smith, it's being done in the name of and for the Queen, Son of Canada. So that's a change of identity. And if you think about it, if you put 20 people up, just stand them up against the wall, 20 people, and then try to determine where they're from, you can't do it. You can't point to one and say, well, he's Canadian, he's American. It would be a guess. So how do you determine that? Well, so let's suppose one of them produces a social insurance card with a social insurance number. Well, you're going to say, well, he's a Canadian. Another one produces a New York State driver's license. Well, he's an American. See, so it's the documentation that determines your identity, and certainly with respect to the government people and the police, so on and so forth, and institutions, whether they know it or not, but that's what it all means. So that's a little bit about identities, and that's how it went from made in the image and likeness of God, therefore belonging to God, subject to his rule, to of Canada or of a country, son of God to son of a country. And again, all that information that was in the system. And the changing the name is not going to do you any good either, because all you're doing is saying, okay, so you want to change the name from John Paul Smith to Joe Blow, but it's still in the system. It's whether you petition the court or can do it through the registrar. Still, it's just changing. It changes the name, but it doesn't change identity. You got to take a new name. This new name has to come from God, has to be of God. And it doesn't mean God reaches out of the sky and hands you a certificate with the name on it. That's what I'm talking about. There's a process. It's in the Bible. So yeah, and you're wasting your time on that and type of citizenship, whether it be state citizenship or federal or national citizenship. Still, identity's identity. Who's your God? And so I know we've done what we've done. The record's the record now, and that's what's being used against us, or can be used against us, and is being used against us. All right. Try to use this information. What can you do with it? This understanding, this knowledge. Um, Let me make this clear. Any and all claims that you might receive in the mail or service, whatever, every single solitary one of those claims, unless it's coming from a man or woman, it is coming from a fictional being. And what I mean by man or woman, like your next door neighbor, a friend, somebody lent you money, them you got to pay back. But all these other claims, like from Canada Revenue Agency, Government of Canada, State of New York, I don't care where they come from, General Motors, Toronto Dominion Bank, Chase Manhattan Bank, I don't care where they come from. They're coming from persons. Persons are fictional beings. Fictional beings don't exist, and they've attached these debts to a person, a fictional being. You're John Paul Smith. That person doesn't exist. So the fact of the matter is, debts don't exist. You're not a debtor. You don't have any debts. Persons don't exist. Debts don't exist. We're the creditor, for heaven's sakes. When the person doesn't exist, you take the debtor out of the equation. Where's the debt? There is no debt, not in reality, other than between, like I say, man to man. It's a different story. You know, your local municipality or county comes up and says, well, you put a garage on the house without a permit. But you being wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove, well, you've looked at the legislation there, the bylaw, whatever, and said, well, it says a person requires a permit. You know you're not a person, so you're not going to go in there and apply for a permit, right? So if somebody comes, the bylaw officer comes along and says, well, you didn't get a permit for the garage, or you got to take it down, whatever the case may be. Oh, whoa, just a second here. Let's have a look at your bylaw here. What's it say? It says person. Well, here, a person's a fictional being, right? Well, here's evidence, proof it's a fictional being. So clearly you can see I'm not a fictional being. So what has this to do with me? How do you want to handle this? Work it out. Wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. But you don't require a permit. You don't have any debts. It's all make believe. It's, you see, you got to get us to believe. Well, believing we're the debtors, how they steal from us. It's debt. Everyone's in debt till they depart this planet. It's all organized theft. The whole concept of debt is to steal from us. It goes no further than that. That's the game. So to be clear here, whatever claim that they're going to make, it's going to be stuck to it's going to be a person making it, a fictional being making the claim. And it's going to be attached to a fictional being, the John Paul Smith, the person, which is also a fictional being. Unless you're a fictional being, none of it applies to you. And I say again, how the heck can there be debts if the debts are attached to a thing that doesn't exist? And they are attached to a thing that doesn't exist. So I say again, what debt? So I guess part of the moral of the story is rather than look for ways to settle up debts with these persons, to negotiate back and forth or communicate back and forth, blah 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 blah, not my name, all this nonsense mumbo jumbo. Why not just face it? Face the reality of the situation. Your claim is against a person. A person is a fictional being. Fictional beings don't exist. What's this got to do with me? Furthermore, if the person doesn't exist, what debt? What kind of game, what kind of shenanigans you guys got going on here? What kind of nonsense are you playing? You creating all these debts and sticking it to these fictional beings and then trying to stick it to me like I'm a fictional being. I'm offended that I'm being treated like a fictional being my whole life. So yeah, whatever claim it is, whatever they come at you, say you're obligated to do this, you're required to do that. No, you're not. That all of that applies to a person. So face it. Just face it. Don't flee from it. There's nothing to flee from here. And again, like I said, guy gets a call from Canada Revenue Agency, calls it to speak to Canada Revenue Agency. Finally comes out that there is no Canada Revenue Agency. So you see, there's no debt. You're not a debtor. You're never a debtor. We provide the credit. You get rid of you take the person out of the equation where they attach the debts to, then you see that there is no such thing as debt. Here's your credit, and that's it. God bless you.